Hello, everyone. My name is Maggie Ivancic, and I am the social worker and center coordinator with UNC's Movement Disorders Center. And if you are watching these videos in order, you just heard Dr. Browner talk a lot about the science behind Parkinson's disease, medications that are involved, and how to integrate treatments into your life and information like that. And for this second session, I want to share with you a little bit about coping with Parkinson's disease and considerations to have. So let's talk a little bit about what our future sessions will look like. In this first session, we're going to be talking about coping, how to share about your diagnosis. In the second session, we'll talk about building your team and what the role of mood and mental health play in Parkinson's disease. In our last session, we'll be really focusing on living your best life and hearing from our patient and care partner panel. I have what? This is a reaction that I hear often from patients and support group members about how they reacted to learning that they had Parkinson's disease. Many of the terms that I hear are people feel overwhelmed, people feel confused, people feel angry, and I often hear people feel relief. People feel relief because they finally have a name that goes along with these symptoms that they've been experiencing that they just could not figure out before and did not have any information. So if one of those resonates with you, know that you're not alone in that. If one of these on the screen resonates with you, know you're not alone in that. But, however you reacted is totally normal because everyone responds differently when they are presented with a new diagnosis. And like Dr. Browner said, oftentimes your reaction to finding out you have Parkinson's disease is impacted by your understanding of Parkinson's disease. Have you known other people with Parkinson's disease? Have you only known people in the world like Michael J. Fox or Alan Alda who've had Parkinson's disease? What did you know about Parkinson's disease before this diagnosis? Another way that you will be impacted by this diagnosis is how the information was presented to you. How did your neurologist share the education? Were you provided with information? Were you provided with next steps forward? Were you provided with medication or other information? So all of that is going to impact your understanding of Parkinson's as well. And recently, I heard a metaphor from a care partner who described that getting a diagnosis with Parkinson's disease, living with Parkinson's disease, is like being on a roller coaster. And what's difficult about it is the care partner and the person with Parkinson's disease are in two different carts on the roller coaster. And sometimes one person's up and the other person's down. Sometimes you're moving at the same pace and you're on the same page. And sometimes someone is coasting real steady, feeling good, while the other person's in a loop-de-loop. So the understanding that people with Parkinson's and care partners can have really different reactions, and learning how to cope with those different reactions, it's important to talk about it with each other. It's important to talk about it with your care team. So that we can support you in figuring out how to best support you. So let's talk about how people cope in these first few months and years. Often I hear people ask themselves, why me? Trying to make sense of the disease and how to integrate this new identity into your life. Gathering information, learning about what Parkinson's disease is, attending webinars like this one, right? We encourage you not to overwhelm yourself with research. We encourage you that if you would like to find out education, if you'd like to find out information, find out what research is out there, get it from some reputable sources like the Parkinson's Foundation or the Michael J. Fox Foundation, the Davis Phinney Foundation. But if you're really interested in research, hope you'll reach out to your healthcare team to ask, what's going on in the research world, and we'd be happy to share with you. And oftentimes in these first few months and years, people are deciding when to disclose about their diagnosis. You may be someone who, as soon as you heard the diagnosis, you were on the phone telling your family and friends, and you were happy to get out there and share it with people and find support. On the other hand, there are others who want to take some time to figure out, what does this diagnosis mean for me, and take a little bit more time in figuring out when they want to disclose that diagnosis. You might be exploring the different resources like support groups or exercise groups in the community. And like Dr. Browner shared in her presentation, realizing it's more than a movement disorder. With Parkinson's disease, it does not just come with motor symptoms. There are also those non-motor symptoms that were discussed in the presentation: mood, cognition, constipation, sleep, changes to your sleep. But realizing ultimately you can do this, and it's possible. But even though it's possible, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Change is hard. When it comes to Parkinson's disease, you're experiencing changes to your body, to your lifestyle. You may be someone who is an avid aerobic exerciser, and so that's not going to be anything that's very different to your routine. But if you're not, finding a way to build aerobic exercise into your routine may take some time, and that's a change in your lifestyle. Planning for the future. When people receive a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, many times you have this feeling that there are things that are outside of your control, and in ways that you never thought before. But planning for the future can give you some sense of control back. Having conversations with your family, your friends, your healthcare team early and often about what your expectations are for the future, what medical interventions you would or wouldn't want in the future, what your living arrangements might be in the future, and again, what your expectations of those are. None of us can predict the future. None of us know what that future holds. So just opening up that conversation and being honest about it is important. And we talked about that sense of control. Again, it's difficult, but planning is a way that we can take some of that control back. Identity. Identity is another one of those things that are changing too. You have this new diagnosis that you're integrating into your identity. And what does that mean for you? And again, allow space for you to feel all of your feelings, the grief and frustration, and like we talked about in the slide right before this, why me? It's important to process those emotions, to feel them, and to figure out how to move through them so that you can find a space for growth, non-judgment, and meaning. And it takes time. And it takes talking with other people. No one can get through life alone, and we want to be here to support you through this process. So let's talk about talking about that you can't do anything alone. No one gets through life alone. Let's talk about the different roles of your support system. Let's talk about care partner. Care partner role is so important to have someone, whether that's a spouse, maybe it's a child, maybe it's a good family friend, someone that you feel like that you can rely on and you can go to for support. This person is the person we consider, the rock, person holding you steady. There is your healthcare team who's here to talk about, provide education about Parkinson's disease, treatments, and how to improve your motor symptoms and your non-motor symptoms. Support groups. Sometimes at the beginning of Parkinson's disease, when you're just receiving a diagnosis, people aren't interested in support groups. And I say, that's okay. That is okay. And support groups are not for everybody, but I really encourage people who are looking for that connection, looking to learn from other people who have been through this, who have questions that you might want to know the answers to, or you have questions they might want to know the answers to. It's a really good space to ask questions, to share information, to share resources, and to find some good friends. So support groups may or may not be something that you're interested at this time, but I would always encourage you to kind of leave the door open for when you feel like it might be right for you. But let's not forget our family and friends. So family and friends are so crucial, so important. These are going to be the people who are helping you get out of the house, stay involved with fun activities and socialization. Have your friends come to you if you don't feel like going out, and make a list of meaningful activities that you want to do. If that's gardening, if that's painting, if that's doing something creative, if it's dancing, pick something that's meaningful for you and try and keep it in your routine. As we've seen in these past 3 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic, social isolation does a lot of harm. So we encourage you to stay active, not only in exercising, but within your family and friend group and community. Stay active, keep involved. We want to help keep you involved in those things too. So please, your healthcare team, let your healthcare team know what you're interested in and how you want to continue those projects and in those ways. And also, look into balancing Parkinson's disease activities with non-Parkinson's disease activities. Oftentimes, people can get really involved in the Parkinson's community with your support groups and exercise classes and attending webinars like this. And it can, attending your appointments in general. There are so many appointments to attend. And it can often feel like Parkinson's disease has become a focal center point in your weekly routine. I would encourage you to get some non-Parkinson's disease related activities in your schedule and have some fun. Go to the movies, plan a date with friends, take a trip. There is more to this world than just Parkinson's disease. So it's important to find that balance between the Parkinson's disease activities that are helpful and going to help you so much in the long run. We also know these non-Parkinson's activities are really helpful too. So let's talk about sharing your diagnosis. We talked a little bit about this before, but for many people, sharing about yourself does not come naturally. And when sharing about a new diagnosis, something that people feel is private and personal, can be even more uncomfortable. So when I talk with patients, what I hear in support groups, when people are disclosing a diagnosis, I think it's important to talk with yourself about what you're comfortable with disclosing and what you're comfortable with that conversation looking like. Set your boundaries for what that conversation will be. For some people, it might sound a little bit like this. You're talking to a friend and you say, I've got some news I would like to share with you, and I'm not looking for any advice right now, and there's nothing that I need from you. I just want to share with you about this, and we can move on. So that you can share about how well you're doing, and you can share if you want support now or if you don't want support. Or you can plant the seed of, I don't need any support right now, but maybe later on down the road, that you would be identifying them as a person that you could reach out to for support. Sharing about your diagnosis can be really scary for some people, to talk about this news. And when I've had those conversations with patients, they tell me that, after they've shared about the diagnosis, they get these overwhelming feelings of security and relief. That being able to live honestly and be able to share about what's been going on with them that they've been, trying to hide, or, just not being able to fully be your authentic self around other people, is a hard way to live. So it's good to be able to talk about your diagnosis with people honestly, but you have to find when that's right for you. And so I encourage you to think about what that means for yourself, and disclose when you're ready. Now, for those who are still working, how to communicate with your employer. Should you disclose your Parkinson's disease to your work? This may have a number of factors related to it, including the relationship that you have with your supervisor. Do you feel safe disclosing this and not getting any repercussions? And that also might entail the nature of your work, and if your symptoms are impacting your work or impacting your safety or other safety in any way. Are your symptoms apparent? Are other people making comments to you or asking you about them, or are you doing your best to hide them? We were just talking about how unnerving or uncomfortable it is to hide your symptoms. And often when people hide their symptoms or attempt to hide their symptoms, it can create anxiety, which can then in turn make your symptoms even more, your motor symptoms even more apparent. Anxiety can impact your motor symptoms and make them worse. So these are all things to consider when talking to your employer. I also want to mention the Americans with Disabilities Act. Has a law that requires that employers make reasonable accommodations for employees with Parkinson's disease as long as they do not pose undue hardship. So your job under this law should be protected if there are reasonable accommodations that can be made that are not impacting the safety of you or others, to continue working and to make a plan with your employer. I'd also, if you're planning on disclosing your diagnosis to your employer, I would talk to your human resources about employer offered disability plans to see exactly what those look like, and to see if that would be something that you would be interested in if you're eligible for them, or if you're interested in using them in the future. So a few things to keep in mind when disclosing your diagnosis to your employer. Ultimately, throughout this entire presentation, we've been talking about communication. Communication is key. When it comes to Parkinson's disease, having open communication between your care partner and your family around what your care needs are, the experiences you're having, your expectations for the future, how you want to share about your diagnosis. I should add, it's not just about you sharing about the diagnosis. What are you comfortable, your care partner or other family members sharing about your diagnosis? It's good to have those conversations as well, so everyone stays on the same page. Making a plan. We talked about making a plan for the future and giving yourself a sense of control on what that plan would be. Educating when you feel ready, educating others about your Parkinson's disease and how it affects you. As you may have heard, if you've met one person with Parkinson's disease, you've met one person with Parkinson's disease. Each person's symptoms are individual to them and their Parkinson's disease. So it's really hard to compare yourself to someone else. Sure, there may be similarities, but there are differences between people with Parkinson's disease, and it's important to be able to educate others about your experience when you feel like that would be something that you would want to do. Make sure not to let your voice get lost in the crowd. This is a lot of information. This is a lot of stuff. Make sure that people aren't speaking for you or speaking around you. Make sure you have a voice in this conversation too. We want to know what your interests are. We want to know what you want. So speak up and let us know, and don't let your voice get lost. When it comes to communication with yourself about what your expectations are, what your feelings around Parkinson's are, what communication with your family, with the team, learning about all of this, learning about yourself can help you come to better terms with Parkinson's disease. And that is what we're here to do and to learn, is how to live well with Parkinson's. So I hope that a few of the things that I shared today about what these first few months and years look like with Parkinson's disease from a coping perspective, these considerations have resonated with you, maybe have been some things that you can think about and move forward with in the future. And I look forward to seeing you all again in our next session. Thank you.